Hello and welcome to the podcast Emotional Intelligence, your greatest asset and key to success. I'm your host, Dr. Jami Carlacio, coming to you from the Greater New Haven, Connecticut area. As a positive intelligence or PQ coach, I'm committed to helping people develop both emotional intelligence and mental fitness. That is, you'll come to regard problems as situations that help you learn and grow. PQ is a way of being and doing in the world that enables you to develop and sustain a positive relationship with yourself and others, at home, at work, and everywhere in between. Please subscribe to this podcast and tap the like button so more people can enjoy the benefits of PQ. And now, here's the show. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jami Carlacio, and if you heard that intro, you already know that. And today we are going to talk about imposter syndrome, and I am pleased that I have a wonderful guest here to help me discuss this. Her name is Siobhan Murphy. Notice this pronunciation of her name. She has a lovely Irish name, and let me just give you a few words about Siobhan. She holds a Master Certified Coach credential, and she serves as an executive coach, mental fitness coach, and a grief recovery specialist, which I believe is one of the most important things. We have so many things that we are grieving, not just loved ones, but situations. She answered the call of her own heart to bring a new form of relating to humanity, playing a pivotal role in launching the early coaching industry. So she is a true veteran, and inspired by a fellow manager at her first corporate job who prayed just to hide out under his desk until he could retire, which sounds really sad. Siobhan set out to create more ease and growth and innovation and joy in the workplace. And so for the past 28 years, she has been assisting executives in leading from both their head and their heart. And hello, Siobhan, how are you today? Thank you for coming on.
I'm delighted to be here, Jami, and I love talking about ways people can be empowered. And I love that we share the frame of the mental fitness coaching. I think it'll be useful for this conversation.
It totally will. So our topic is imposter syndrome, and I'm guessing that a lot of people who are listening or watching this know exactly what we are talking about, but I wanted to just say a few words to start our conversation off. So one of the things is it's not a mental illness, but if you are prone to feeling depressed or anxious, or you're suffering from low self-esteem, feeling like an imposter may come as a natural result of that. So one of the things I wanted to quote Mark Waldman, who is a positive psychology specialist, and he talks about confidence and self-esteem, and he says they're generated by our imagination and the process of our default network in our brain. And he said self-esteem, and I think we all know this, is about how we feel about ourselves. You know, that confidence is anchored in our belief that we can accomplish our desired goals, or if we're suffering from lack of self-confidence or lack of self-esteem, maybe the feeling that we can't accomplish them. And he said our entire sense of self is a creative construction, which is interesting. It's a creative construction that takes place in our parietal lobe and our medial frontal cortex, where these are the where the imagination resides. And so before we talk about a neuropsychological definition of self-esteem, he points out that self-esteem does not help you achieve more goals. And that's kind of interesting. It's kind of maybe paradoxical. It has more to do with our opinion of ourselves. And so it's self-referential, and it is correlated with anxiety and depression. But it turns out that poor self-esteem doesn't necessarily interfere with our success ratio. And I'm going to talk about why in a minute. But what's going on is a lot of celebrities and performers and, high achieving people have high confidence in their skills, but they also feel like their low self confidence maybe prevents them from going even higher. And the other thing is, I was talking to a friend about Van Morrison, and he is an amazing singer and performer. And, he's done so well in the music industry, but he has terrible stage fright. And so he stands at the back of the stage and he's almost hidden from view. He stands right by the percussion. And it's not that it feels like an imposter, but it made me think about how he makes himself invisible. And there are a lot of ways to improve your self esteem. And one of them is to write down your accomplishments every single day. And one of them might be getting out of bed without hitting the snooze button, or eating a healthy breakfast, or stepping outside for a short walk. It doesn't have to be that you just conquered the world and you achieved world peace. It is something small and measurable. But one of the things I want to talk about in terms of applying it to positive intelligence is when we feel like imposters, like we don't belong, like somebody's going to find out. And oh my gosh, I felt that way in graduate school. I thought any day someone was going to say, Jami, we made a huge mistake. You don't belong here. You have to leave. And it was really scary. It kind of interfered with my ability to really embrace my education. But our judge is active in our head saying, well, you're not good enough. You don't really fit in. You need more education. You need another credential. And what that means is we need some kind of external validation to feel like we're a success. And so you need the degree on the wall, or you need somebody to pat you on the back, or you need somebody to promote you versus having it within and that intrinsic feeling. And the hyperachiever really thrives on this. So the hyperachiever says, oh, no, 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 go get another degree. Oh, no, no, do this, do that. But at the same time, the hyperachiever can help us because that hyperachiever does help us maybe go on and do something. And maybe that thing that you went on to achieve turned out to be a really important aspect of who you are, and a contributor to all the gifts that you actually bring to the world. And so, what I'm hoping we can also talk about, Siobhan, is how we need to really reframe our thinking and consider that we're not imposters, that somehow, some way, wherever we are, we're supposed to be here. And the important thing is that we do have something to offer other people, and some of it is just right here inside. So that's a kickoff to the conversation, and I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, well, thank you for that background. What I want to share about the actual term imposter syndrome is
Mm-hmm.
that it's been around since the late 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
Two women, Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes, did a study of women, and they called it the imposter phenomenon.
Uh-huh.
And basically, it was a belief that people were not really as intelligent as they thought they were, and that they had somehow fooled people that they were competent. And it's evolved over the years to add the name syndrome, which kind of psychologicalizes it. And
Uh-huh.
it's not actually something in the DSM, the Diagnostic
Right.
and Statistical Manual. And it's a set of feelings of fraudulence and inadequacy. It can be a sense of anxiety or an undeservingness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really a sense of beliefs, or a set of beliefs, that I'm supposed to already know how to
Mm-hmm.
do something I'm new at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it thrives with people in competitive and high stakes environments. So, in terms of the positive intelligence language, the saboteurs, the high achievers, and the sticklers, the perfectionists,
Oh, the
high
sticklers.
achievers,
Right.
those accustomed to, levels of personal success, are the ones most susceptible to it. And it's kind of interesting. My top saboteurs are a stickler, which is the perfectionist pattern, and high achiever. So,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm. Mine too.
understand this. Um,
Yeah.
but once we understand that it's a set of feelings and beliefs, you use the word reframing, we can totally reframe this. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the part of the conversation I'd like to encourage. The stakes for people to reframe it are high because it increases stress and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It is clear now in more recent research that men and women suffer from it alike.
Mm-hmm.
There are some systemic reasons for it. So, for example, um, more diverse, women and people of color may have less role models and examples, so that can
Mm-hmm.
contribute to imposter syndrome. But on the other hand, men are socialized not to admit these kinds of feelings, so they may have it
Exactly.
and not actually report it.
Mm-hmm.
My own
Exactly.
experience as a coach listening to people's insides over the years is that men and women both have it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's less about, um, I guess, part of the reframe is, if you're new or doing anything risky, and who's not doing something new in the 21st century post pandemic world,
Everything's new.
right? We're going to have feelings of what I call clumsy, awkward, and stupid
Mm-hmm.
as we learn. And there's less certainty. We're in a VUCA environment.
A
Vol-
what? What?
VUCA is a term to describe the current environment. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
good.
so when we're in this kind of VUCA world, we there's not a playbook, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're making it
Mm-hmm.
up as we go along, which is why people need coaching, right? To connect to their inner wisdom and be able to navigate next steps. So, another word I want to bring into this is the idea of shame.
Oh
And
yeah.
the most useful translation of that I've heard is should have already mastered everything. And I think it aligns very well with imposter syndrome because that is the belief. I should
Yeah.
already know how,
Yeah.
right? So we in coaching and certainly mental fitness coaches help people
Mm-hmm.
reframe things, help people change the beliefs and feel the feelings and do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I would really like for the time that we're together to be able to zoom out to a much larger picture.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what's happened by naming this a syndrome is
Yeah.
that we've made this something that is an individual's problem.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
That's a
going
good
to
point.
look at
Yeah.
our navel and gaze at it and figure out why do we have these feelings and how can I avoid these feelings. And I think we need to have a completely different conversation. And some of that was informed by some work I heard by a woman named Hala Thomasditter. She's a woman from Iceland who was CEO of the B Team, which is a nonprofit organization designed to help business be used for good. She
Mm.
also was a presidential candidate in Iceland. I think she might be running again. But when I heard her talk about this particular idea of imposter syndrome, she kind of turned some things on the head for me. So, one, she said, is imposter syndrome is an antidote to hubris syndrome.
Mm.
And hubris syndrome, she identified as the overconfidence, egotistical kind of attitude that was heavily rewarded in the last century. If we think of 20th century leadership style, it was more autocratic, it was very command and control. They were looking for uniformity, it was very hierarchical. The people at the top did have all the knowledge, right? And so that kind of confident leader was required in that environment.
Can I stop
What's
you for just a
Yes.
moment just to
Mhm.
ask a couple of questions so
Sure.
we can
Mhm.
amplify that?
Sure.
The first thing is, well, I want to step back in a moment to positive intelligence, but I'm interested in, and I do agree with about the men. I think there's so many gender constructions out there that teach women how to be a certain way and teach men how to be a certain way. And because we are taught maybe to express more emotion, or we're allowed and men aren't, the fact that we express that makes us often look weaker or appear weaker in some people's eyes, and that's been borne out by research. And unfortunately, I think it also makes it difficult for men to feel authentic, and it actually is probably worse because they're stuffing it. And I think of when you talked about hubris, I was thinking oftentimes we have a large ego with an inferiority complex.
Mhm.
So there's something about need, like a puffer fish. You need to puff yourself out because you feel so inadequate inside. And then I was also wondering, and maybe you're going to get to this, I'm surprised that you said it was more autocratic, this idea of the corporate structure or the supreme being at the head of the company, and that maybe it's been flattening out because I still kind of see that happening. So maybe you could say more about that.
Sure. I don't think I said flattening out, but what I
No,
was
I was
talking
just
about was
wondering. Yeah,
20th century leadership styles were very hierarchical and
almost
very
pyramid.
command and control oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And the leaders, whether it was in medicine, education, the family, business, or government, were the ones who had the education, who had the information, and who had the power. And so you could have a command and control uh, kind of way of organizing people. And students were taught, we were taught in rows to read, write, and to be able to follow directions. So we could be good factory workers and soldiers and employees, right? And that's a paradigm that served us well at the time in terms of making more abundance available to more people and raise certain standards of living, beyond what we had experienced, say, in the 19th century. However, now we're in a new time. And when Hala talked about the antidote to hubris syndrome, humility is now a leadership strength, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
So
true.
the ability to admit that we don't know, the, that we make mistakes, that
Mm-hmm.
we're ever learning is
Mm-hmm.
a quality of leadership that's appreciated now. We know now that leaders with higher emotional intelligence, that's the differentiator. If everybody
Mm-hmm.
has the same degrees, the same experience, the same letters after their name, what's the thing that makes the difference at the senior levels? It is the emotional intelligence. So now we require things like empathy, innovation, inclusion, humility,
Mm-hmm.
empowerment. We need to enter into the unknowing
Mm-hmm.
because in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, we can't know everything. And so we need to garner the wisdom of the whole, right? A leader now, everybody in this organization has a smartphone. So they have access to data in ways that employees never had before. And so I guess when bringing it back to imposter syndrome, instead of saying, how do I overcome my feelings of inadequacy and feeling like a fraud when I don't know?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to suggest that people embrace the idea that not only don't you know, you can't know, and to enter into the unknowing with empathy for yourself and others, with humility to collaborate and create and innovate a way forward. So, new questions that people could ask, would be, what's at stake here? What can I, as a unique individual with a unique set of strengths and experiences, contribute here? And it will take us off of what I'm going to, I've kind of affectionately called the navel gazing of I'm not good enough, to a more sage conversation. So if we're using positive intelligence language, we would say, how do we move out of the saboteur mind into the sage by asking new and better questions that will actually tap our wisdom and tap the wisdom of other people? So I'll pause
Yeah.
there to see if you have any questions
Thank you.
about that.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about the way that we can move out of the saboteur brain. First of all, and this is about emotional intelligence as well, is self-awareness. And knowing what you don't know is a mark of intelligence, I believe.
Mhm.
I knew everything when I was 18. I know almost nothing at my age now, but I know how to learn. And because I know that I don't know, I am more open to receiving information from lots of different people. In fact, I used to be a professor, so I approached my teaching in the 90s like, oh my gosh, I have to know everything. But in the 2000s, a wonderful sage professor, mentor of mine said, Jami, you don't have to know everything. Elicit. And I thought, oh my gosh, thank goodness. It took all the pressure off me. And I started handing the reins to my students to take charge of their learning. And I was a guide and a coach, but they got to present material. They had to do the research and share it. And it just made a huge difference. And then I was open to learning from them. And that's how I ended up, teaching for the last 18 or so years, was to actually just enjoy how my students were growing and learning. The thing is, though, they all felt like imposters. I taught at two different Ivies, and especially at an Ivy, everyone feels like they have to work hard and try hard and be the smartest person. And I used to teach writing, and students aren't always great at writing when they come to college. High school and college are completely different ball games. Even if you went to the best prep school, you don't come to college equipped to write like a college student. And I would say to my students, if you already knew this, I wouldn't have a job. So, of course, you don't know it yet, right? And I tried to assure them that this was a process that was going to be ongoing. And in fact, at around 10 weeks, if in a 15-week semester, I saw light bulbs go on, and the whole room would just light up with a lot of new knowledge and ability. But back to positive intelligence, as accessing the sage brain, like, is self-empathy. Like, oh yeah, it's okay you don't know that. It's okay that there's a ramp up period. You may be the smartest person on the planet, but if you're going into a new job, there's still a ramp up period.
Yes.
And
So
yeah,
just to add what you're saying, it goes back to that shame analogy, right? I
mm,
should have already mastered everything. I should already
mm-hmm,
know how to write at a college level when I'm a freshman. That doesn't make sense, right?
right.
So giving ourselves permission to not know, I say, I know that I don't know. I
Mm-hmm,
say, no, I have another handy saying around that. I can't know what I don't know yet.
yeah.
I can't know what I don't know yet. And a minister friend of mine, Reverend Janine Burns, taught me this little ditty for when I make mistakes, which has really helped my stickler. And it's simple. It goes like this: oops, I made a mistake and I'm beautiful.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
it interrupts the pattern of my
Mm,
stickler saboteur. If I'm going to learn and grow, I must make mistakes. And I love the analogy of when a little baby is learning to walk,
mm-hmm,
they fall more than they take steps, right?
mm-hmm,
And nobody says, you stupid idiot, you didn't walk yet.
mm-hmm.
We cheer when they
Yeah.
fall, we encourage them, and we have the full belief that of course they're going to walk before they get to school, right? We don't even question that that's a thing, right? And we're just there encouraging them through that mistake making process. And somehow when we get to be in bigger bodies, we stop that and we think, bad girl, you didn't do it right, when you're trying something new. And who's not trying something new in 2024? There's something new every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the technology changes faster than we can blink. I want to go back to the baby thing right away, because babies don't fall and then cry. They just get right back up and try
Right.
again. It
Exactly.
doesn't even occur to a baby, and maybe we all need to have that baby mindset. Fall down, just get back up. That's resilience. And resilience is certainly part of emotional intelligence and positive intelligence. And it deals with exploring and innovating. Oh, yeah, I did make a mistake. And yeah, it was a little expensive, it was a little costly, but now I have learned, and I have that gift of learning this thing, and I'm going to pivot into a new direction that I wouldn't have really appreciated had I not made this other mistake.
Yes. And so I guess the invitation for people who consider themselves having imposter syndrome is to use self command
Yeah.
and say, oh, that thought is not useful to me right now. Let me switch to a different thought. Let me get in my body, feel the feels if I have to feel them to release them, right?
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
do two fingers together with such
Mhm.
exquisite attention that we can feel the ridges of the fingertips,
Mhm.
and then shift to a different question.
Mhm.
What do I need to learn here? How can I make my best contribution? What's the unique gift I have to offer that I could focus on right now?
Right.
Who can help, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what I think Hala gave to me was, oh, let's not spend our precious attention too much on imposter syndrome. Let's shift it into questions. What's the benefit of imposter syndrome? Oh, I'll get to express my humility
Mhm.
and connect with empathy to other people who are also trying to know,
Mhm.
and surf the waves of the VUCA world and innovate and create.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it reminds me of the yes and game that
Yes.
Shirzad Shamin taught us. If everyone, let's say there are 5 people in a team meeting and maybe you're the chairing the meeting or whatever, and you need to come up with a solution, everybody gets a chance to say something and nobody is shamed because it's a yes and. So you build on what somebody said. There's at least 10% of what they said that you can use and maybe more. And then you add something, and pretty soon you've got 5 or 6 ideas that sound really good, and then you can really work with them. But if everyone's like, no, that's a dumb idea, or I'm not saying a word because I don't want to look dumb.
Yes, that yes and game is a wonderful sage power. The other
Mm-hmm.
one I suggest people do is to get a picture of them as either a young child
Mm,
learning to walk or a 5-year-old, and have empathy for how would they be talking to their inner little self when they were
mm-hmm.
trying to learn something new. And I'm sure they would coo at the baby, and they would be gentle and kind and warm to their 5-year-old self. And when you can start to envision the other people on your team or in your family or in your environment that you're working with as 5-year-olds, and with the same care and gentleness that you would offer them if they were small children, goes a long way to making connection with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And then people feel belonging for sure,
Mm-hmm.
and are much more able to step into that unknowing place and risk a new idea.
Yeah, the willingness to take risks. And I want to end on this note because we're out of time. But I was also reading some research, and this one woman wrote a book called New Happy. And I'll put that in the show notes. But one of the things she says is we live in such an individualistic culture, but at the same time, we all seek connection. And that empathy and that willingness to take risks and the willingness to admit you don't know is a way of forging that connection. Because as soon as you think you know more or you feel like you have to, that's a separation thing. It puts up a wall. And the idea is that, like you said, with the little child, the younger version, that is connection. And that connects me to you. As soon as you make a mistake, I know I have got permission to make one.
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
as soon as I admit I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
you have permission to say, I don't know either. So who does know, or how can we find out, or what do we need to create?
Right, right. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. I'm going to conclude this podcast with a clip from a fun song that I
Well,
found. So hold on while I present my screen. And here it is. I think that's it's a little loud.
I'm an imposter, just a pretender. All of my worst fears whisper in the dark, scream at the mirror, not to believe them, and pick up the pieces of my shattered heart.
that's great. Thank you for that.
I know. Hold on. I gotta turn it off. All right. So thank you so much. Siobhan's information will be in the show notes as well as mine. And if you are thinking that you want to get more information on positive intelligence and any kind of other coaching, workplace coaching, you know where to find us. And until then, we will see you next week at the PQ Gym. Take care.
Thank you so much, Jamie.
You bet. Bye-bye.